Right, this is Linton the Swarm Vassal, Bellator light heavyweight contender, and you're watching the MMA Crypt Fighting Talk Show.
Gregory Stone, MMA.com. On today's show, we have UFC Women's Bantamweight and current arse beater of arse grabbers, Leslie Peacemaker Smith. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thank you for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
So, Leslie, you've been pretty much blasted around the MMA forums, the MMA websites the past week or so in regards to you having a street fight with a guy who grabbed your friend's bottom. First and foremost, just for the listeners who may not have heard the story, and just so I can get a better insight as to what happened the day that you had a fight with this guy, could you talk us through exactly what happened and break down the fight a little bit for us, please, Leslie?
Sure. You want to hear what happened? I can tell you what happened.
Yeah.
We were standing outside of a bar in San Francisco. We hadn't even gone in. We were just going by to meet some friends. We hadn't had anything to drink. There was a group of there's four of us, and we were standing outside the bar, and a guy walked up the street. He was on the sidewalk just like we were, and he came from away from the bar, and he walked past us towards the bar, and then kept walking away from the bar. And right after he passed us, my friend looked over at me, and she said, "He just grabbed my ass." And I don't remember if I said anything or if I just walked after him, but I walked after him, and I was like, hey, you can't do that. And he was like, yes, I can. And I was like, no, you can't. And he was like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And I was like, no, motherfucker, you can't. And then he turned around and he spit in my face, saliva on my face, and threw a big right hand, which I ducked. And then I went in and grabbed his body, and he grabbed my hair. He had a hold of my hair for pretty much the entire rest of the time until the very end when he said sorry. He had a hold of my hair, and so I pushed him up against a building, and then I pulled his legs out. I did a little wall takedown. I got both of his legs and pulled him out, and then he was on the ground, and at first he gave me his back, and so I was going to choke him out. I put my arm around his neck, and I started finishing the hold, but a couple different things made me not want to finish it. One of them was I wanted to be careful of my knee, because I'm in a healing phase right now. Yeah. Another one was I know that my training partners do a good job of staying clean, and I didn't know this person. I already had no respect for this person, so I didn't really want to get close to this person. And do you train?
No.
Do you do jiu-jitsu?
No, but
no, okay. When you're finishing the choke, the rear naked choke, your head gets really, really close to the other person's head. Like you're as you get tighter and tighter, you're really pulling them into you. Your chest is on their back, and you you're almost looking to get ear to ear with them. And I didn't really want to get that close to him, to tell you the truth. And then the third thing that went through my mind was the story of Eric Garner, the man in New York who died because he was put in a chokehold by a police officer.
Yeah.
Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know which one you're about.
Yeah. So with all those things in my head, it just, I did not feel right going for the choke. So I let go of it, and then I just started dropping elbows until he said sorry.
Just what was gross about his hair, Leslie? Was it like, did it smell? Was it greasy? Just what was it?
I didn't know the guy, and I know that all my training partners clean themselves up really well. It was more the idea of getting close to someone's hair that I don't know. It wasn't Pantene fresh, and I just don't know. I mean, hair is like, that's one of the first things that you learn when you're a young woman, I think, is that you're not supposed to share hairbrushes with the other kids. I went to public schools when I was younger, so there would be lice scares all the time, you just don't want to get that close to strangers, especially because the people that I train with, like I said, they're clean, and I know that they have good hygiene because I see them every day. But then the people that I fight with, they have blood tests. So I know that they don't have hepatitis or AIDS or anything like that. And regardless of what the guy looks like, I don't know anything about him. I didn't know anything about him. And so to get in such close quarters, jiu-jitsu can be a rather intimate thing.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to get that close to someone. So I let go of it.
Well, speaking of that, did you get any of this guy's blood on you? Did he bite you at all? Did he scratch you at all? Was there any worry of catching anything off this guy once the little scuffle was over?
He pretty much just held on to my hair. He held on to my hair and, he threw that big punch and held on to my hair, and he was trying to control me by using my head. But since I pushed him against the cage and then took him down, that really took everything out of him. I think that he still was holding onto my hair when I was going for the choke, and then it was only when I started dropping elbows on him that he was actually let go of it. So maybe that's a street fighting lesson for someone in there, is don't get so caught up on holding someone's hair that you start taking a bunch of elbows.
Was he very intoxicated? Do you think he even remembers the fight? Did he probably wake up and thought, "Oh, my face hurts. What happened there?"
Right. Well, I don't think he was intoxicated.
No, he was actually sober.
There's nothing about him that made him seem intoxicated. I've seen some news stories saying that he was intoxicated, but I think that was those are just buzzwords to make it more exciting. Because
I think that's sort of the
like I said.
I think that's the sort of vision you get when you hear the story. It's not like a regular thing to do. You go up and grab someone's behind, so you just automatically assume that the guy was drunk or intoxicated, and especially to start fighting with a woman too.
Right. Well, yeah, no, he didn't come from the bar. I don't recall smelling any alcohol on him, but I wasn't trying to. I wasn't exactly sticking my face inside and trying to inhale the essence of him. That's for sure. So I don't think he was intoxicated, and I just think he was a weirdo who thought that he could touch whoever he wanted to on the street.
So you said that you spotted him before he actually grabbed your friends behind. Did you expect any trouble from this guy? Do you look out the ordinary, like, you sort of expect some trouble from him, like, oh, damn, here we go, I'm going to get something from this guy?
No, I didn't think we were going to fight. I didn't go after him thinking that we were going to fight. I went after him to tell him that that's not right and that he can't do that. I think somewhere in my head I just had the idea that I wanted him to say sorry or acknowledge that that's a dick move or acknowledge that he was fucked up for doing that. Or I shouldn't use bad words, but I was hoping that he would acknowledge somehow that what he did was not right. And I did not expect him to turn around and spit and swing on me. That's for sure. I've gotten mostly really good feedback on it. It's been wonderful to hear all my female friends, the vast majority of whom have been touched inappropriately by strangers in public. It's a reality of being a woman, living and going out in public. So the vast majority of them have been thrilled to hear about it, but some people have been pretty down on it, that I went after this guy, that I'm this horrible trained MMA fighter who just attacked this poor drunken man on the street, which is totally inaccurate, because he wasn't drunken, and I did not attack him. He attacked me. He assaulted my friend. Butt grabbing is sexual assault. I know that people really like to think that it's not that big of a deal. oh, he just grabbed her ass, no big deal, and that women are not taught to fight back or demand respect in that situation, that often women will end up questioning whether or not they invited that in some way, or wondering if they wore the wrong outfit or what, or if they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But there's no excuse for that. It's not right. People shouldn't do that. He sexually assaulted my friend, and then when he spit on me, that's assault as well. It's either assault or battery. I don't really know what the difference. I Googled it, but I forget what it said. And then when he swung on me, that's one of them as well, either the assault or the battery. And the fact that he didn't connect, that doesn't change the fact that his intentions were to cause me physical harm. So he escalated the whole thing, and I just ended up fighting back. Maybe that's going to make me sound not quite so cool to anybody who is so excited about this story, that I did not go after him to fight him in the first place, but it's just the truth.
Yeah, well, you teach self-defense classes for women, so in a way, are you a little disappointed that you had to put in action what you actually teach every day? Because it's not that big of a deal to say sorry to somebody. You know, it doesn't have to turn into a fight. He doesn't have to throw a punch at you.
I am a little bit disappointed that it turned into a fight, because I believe in the non-initiation of violence. I've definitely messed up. I have had, situations in my past where I have been violent in public before, and I'm not proud of them. But that doesn't stop me from acknowledging and knowing deep down inside that non-initiation of violence is the right way to do it. It's the right way to be. I only had just planned on teaching my first self-defense workshop. I had scheduled it about 2 weeks before that happened, and I'm actually really glad that the timing worked out the way that it did, because we didn't let the story get out until after the self-defense classes had happened. So it's not like it was some publicity stuff.
When did this happen, Leslie? Was it because the story broke, I believe, just this week or last week? Well, I read it this week, about 4 days ago. I read the story. So when did this actually happen?
It happened about 2 weeks before the story came out, because at first I wasn't going to tell anybody about it. I was embarrassed that I had been fighting in public, outside of the cage, and I was not proud of that fact at all. And it was only after telling some people and then seeing what a great reaction that they had, that I told my coach, Caesar Gracie, and then he shared it. I could find out the exact date for you, because I can look on my computer right after it happened. I posted on my Facebook a question about how people, other female fighters or females in general, or anybody in general, has dealt with hair pulling in the fight, because I had never dealt with hair pulling before. I'm a trained MMA fighter, but we don't pull hair inside the cage. And so that was a huge gap, I realized, when this happened. That was a huge gap between my knowledge and my skills and what I train and practice as a sport fighter, and what an individual, what a woman especially, needs to be aware of when she's out on the street, because they're two completely different ways of fighting. There's no rules in a street fight.
Yeah, well, it's not just that too, Leslie, because obviously when you get in a cage, you fight somebody who's the same gender as you. You also fight somebody who's around the same weight as you. This guy was a fully grown bloke. How much did he roughly weigh there, Leslie? Because obviously that's something else you can't prepare for. Because one minute you're fighting people your own size and your own gender, then the next thing you know, you got this big, huge guy probably pulling your hair. You don't know what type of body frame you're going to meet on the street either. Also, there's weapons involved too. So I just wanted to know, how big was this guy too, Leslie? Was he a big guy?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't huge. He was he was a white guy about the same size as me. He wasn't crazy tall or crazy swole or anything like that. I tend to think of myself as pretty big, and so I often I just look at people and think they're the same size as me.
Do you think that he's actually looked you up
and
now?
he was.
Do you think that he's looked you up there, Leslie? Do you think do you think he now knows that you're a UFC fighter and he's sort of done some research on you?
Oh, I don't know. You know, there's a lot of domestic violence is a big issue, and most people talk about domestic violence as it affects women. And the vast majority of the people affected by domestic violence are indeed women, but there's a lot of men who are victims of domestic violence as well. But those incidents don't get reported with anywhere near the same frequency per incident because a lot of guys are embarrassed about admitting it. They don't want to admit that something happened with a woman, beating them up or overpowering them or anything like that. So a lot of instances of violence against men by women, and those are just as serious as I mean, violence against anyone is a horrible thing, but a lot of violence against men doesn't get reported because guys are embarrassed to say anything about it. So maybe he does know. I don't know. I would be interested if he ever came out and spoke up and said something about it. I would be fascinated to hear his side of the story. But I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't, because most men don't talk about that publicly.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, well, the reason I asked you when this actually happened was because, was there any fear from yourself that the law might get involved and potentially you might be in trouble with the UFC for fighting outside the cage? Obviously, you was defending yourself and you wasn't really defending your friend because you just asked for an apology. You actually had to use physical force to defend yourself. So ideally, you wouldn't, in your own mind, think that you would get in trouble for something like that. But obviously, people can tell stories and lies, and there's always two sides to every story. He's not told his side yet. But was there any sort of worry that the police might get involved, the law might get involved, and obviously the UFC might get involved due to you having a fight outside of the cage? Was you worried about that at all, Leslie?
I hope they do get involved. That would be fine and great if they did get involved because I did nothing wrong. He did multiple instances of assault. He escalated everything, and as far as deadly force, I did not go to finish a choke. I did not put him out with a chokehold. I'm glad in hindsight that I went with my instinct on that to let go of that. And as soon as he stopped fighting, I stopped fighting as well. So I don't feel like there's anything inside of my actions that I should be reprimanded for. I get that it's got some people unhappy, and I don't want this to be the number one thing that I'm known for. I'd rather be known for I don't know, something peaceful. Something that's not quite so violent. I'm gonna continue to do what I do and live my life and strive for this non-initiation of violence. And I'm not teaching in my self-defense workshop, the one that I've done. I didn't tell anyone to go and beat people up or to go and extract apologies from them or anything like that. I don't want this to be something that other people try and emulate because I don't think it's a great idea. It probably wasn't even a good idea for me. He could have had a gun. He could have had a knife. He could have had a disease. He could have been a better fighter than he was. So there's lots of different things that could have gone wrong. Luckily for me, it didn't. None of those things did go wrong. But What was the question again? I forget where I was going with that.
So it sounds like you might potentially take a new strategy into your self-defense workshop. Is that correct there, Leslie? Has this incident with this bloke, has that sort of made you come up with newer ways, newer tactics to approach the self-defense workshop? Maybe tell your students to maybe ignore certain things, talk things out, maybe not get into physical grappling altercations, etc. Explain some of this stuff to your students that maybe you wouldn't have taught them before.
Well, so one of the big things was that after this happened, I did some research on how to deal with hair pulling, because I've never learned how to deal with hair pulling in any of the situations, in any of the martial arts. I've never heard anyone even address it before. So I did have a couple moves to address hair pulling inside of the seminar, and I'll tell you exactly what they were. So a jiu-jitsu-based move. And this also works for if someone's trying to drag somebody, trying to drag them inside of a van or throw them off of a cliff. It could work for anyone. It's kind of the same move, but what you do is you pull guard. And then they are no longer controlling you because they're not holding your head down below your hips. By pulling guard, you put your hips underneath your head, and then you put your feet in between you and your attacker. And then you can kick him or her. You've got angles where you can kick their knees, you can kick their privates, you can kick them in the face, and yell and scream and shout and hopefully buy yourself some more time so that either the attacker will run away, because that's something that happens most of the time when a person is trying to attack someone. They're looking for a very easy victim. They're looking for someone who is not going to fight back. And so that's one of the main things that we went over in my self-defense class. And it's something that is very common in every self-defense instruction that I have looked up, is to fight back as much as possible and to make as big a scene and make as much noise and be as adamant about not being a willing victim or even an unwilling victim, to just make yourself seem like you are very hard to take advantage of. As far as ignoring things or letting something go by, I hear what you're saying about maybe based on my situation, would I be saying just ignore the butt grab? And the answer to that is no. I don't think that anyone should ignore getting assaulted. I think that it's a big deal for people to be able to set boundaries and then enforce those boundaries. I feel like men growing up, many of them are taught more about how to draw lines in the sand and then tell anybody who crosses that line that they're going to fight them. I think that guys learn that a whole lot more, and this is a sweeping generalization, but women are not taught that as frequently. They're not taught to set boundaries as often. And I think that it's a really big deal to learn how to set boundaries. And if there's anything worth protecting, it is one's own body. And I think that the principles behind being willing to protect your own body I shouldn't say always, but for the most part, I'm generalizing again. And women have often been taught to pick their battles and to not rock the boat and to make the best decision that isn't going to cause problems. But the results of that has been women have not always been respected because we haven't always fought for that respect. And so I would never tell someone to ignore assault upon their body.
So looking back on the incident now, Leslie, is there anything that you would change, do differently, or are you happy with the way things panned out?
That's a really good question. I appreciate you for asking that question, and I've asked myself that question many times, is if there's something that I would have done differently, and I keep going over it, and I cannot see what I would have done differently. I would have gone after him either way to go tell him that what he did was wrong. I felt morally obligated to do that. And then if that situation played out 100 times, I would feel the need to go walk after him and tell him that 100 times. I mean, the friend of mine whose butt that he grabbed, she's a woman with 3 kids, and she was wearing jeans. None of that should matter if she was if she'd been a friend who was a dancer and she'd had like 30 abortions. I would still have chased after him. That's not the point. So maybe I shouldn't have even brought that up, but there's no way that I wouldn't have said something to him. And then he escalated the situation. When he spit on me and swung on me, then I had to defend myself. So even though I do not believe that violence is the answer, I do not see what I could have done differently in that situation.
Well, just my 2 cents.
Do you?
Well, just my 2 cents.
What do you think?
My 2 cents, Leslie, is there's no law against asking for an apology, and there's no law against defending yourself. But there is a law against grabbing people's bums, and there's a law against attempting to swing on women. So by the sounds of things, this guy is doubly in the wrong, and you're doubly in the right.
Hey, thanks.
One last question.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
One last question before I let you go. Sorry if I keep cutting you off. It's because there's a bit of a delay in the connection, so that's why I cut you off sometimes. But one last question before I let you go, Leslie. Since you got your ear busted, exploded in that fight with Jessica Rai, there was tons of pictures coming out, joining pictures of you with Mick Foley, and I noticed that you've actually been in contact with Mick Foley. You actually met him. Could you tell us how that came about, please, Leslie?
You want to hear about Mick?
Yeah.
First of all, shout out to Mick Foley. Happy birthday. His 50th birthday was just a couple days ago on the 7th. And so, yeah, if we could all just collectively send a little silent happy birthday out to him. It was so cool of him to reach out to me after my fight. I was in a horrible mood that night. I was so bummed about the loss. I was so bummed about everything. I didn't want to even go out or talk to anybody. And then when he sent me that tweet, and I was so excited about getting the message from him. He sent me a direct message saying, it's cool, and I've been there, and if you need to talk, then just let me know. And so that night specifically, it was a great feeling for me to be able to go out and have that support in my back pocket. That really helped bolster me a whole lot, because psychologically a loss is devastating in MMA. I know that some people, everyone gets affected differently, but I have never had a loss that hasn't affected me deeply. So it was a great thing for him to reach out to me at that time. And then since then, he has been so nice. I finally got to meet him in person. He did a comedy show. Man, he has a great comedy show. He is fascinating, and he has such a wonderful stage presence. It's no wonder why he is a superstar. He was performing at the Cobb Comedy Club in San Francisco, and I went there with my coach, Cesar Gracie, and we got to go to his show. It was Mick and Brandon Burns, and they put on a wonderful show, and I've been in contact with both of them since then. So it's I've been very lucky to have that friendship, and I think that we're going to be lifetime friends from now on.
Awesome. Was you a fan growing up watching wrestling of Mick Foley's? We're roughly the same age. I grew up watching Mick Foley on wrestling. Did you watch him growing up in the WWF and WCW, etc.?
Nope, I didn't. I didn't watch any wrestling when I was growing up. I've watched a ton of it since I've made friends with him.
Yeah.
And I've read his book since I've made friends with him, and it's been fascinating. I've been getting a kick out of watching all these old matches, and wondering how I can take some of those theatrical elements with me into the into the MMA arena. But no, I never watched anything because I just didn't really watch TV, and that was never something that grabbed me. But it is now.
Is there anything you want to say to your fans, the listeners, before you leave, Leslie?
Just thank you to everybody for being supportive. I want to say thank you to you for having me on your show. I want to say thank you to everybody who's been sharing the story and supporting me, supporting women, supporting MMA. I just appreciate everybody who's been really positive. You know what? I even appreciate the people who've been down on me, because it's way better than the people who used to run around saying a woman will never be able to beat a man, and sending me text messages and direct messages and Facebook messages about how I'm a weak woman and I'll never be able to beat a man. So there's something that's a poetic beauty about getting the messages now about how mean I am for beating this man up. So I appreciate them.
Well, it's my pleasure there, Leslie. Okay, from the MMA Fighting Talk Show, as always, guys, thank you for watching.